Hello and welcome to the local marketing live stream with myself, Luke Hawley. And today we're actually going to go through marketing's theory for everything, kind of. I think you're going to find this session very, very helpful because what we're going to go through today is actually going to highlight what I would argue is the foundation of every major marketing principle. That will help define how you approach interacting and building and nurturing relationships and creating value with your customers. So here's an example, and it's very top of mind for me as I'm doing some work with a towing company. So you can imagine, right? Your car's broken down, you're at home, and you're like, oh man, I'm anxious, I'm frustrated, I'm annoyed. My car's no longer working. I need someone to come in and tow the car to my mechanic. So I'm going to jump online, I'm going to Google it. Who's my local towing agency or towing company? Have a bit of a look. And I noticed that, jump on Google search, I look on Google Maps, I got a bunch of reviews, 30 here, 40 here, 50 here. I click through websites and it feels like every website's essentially just saying the same thing. 24/7, right? Reviews and they tow. And at a moment where I'm anxious, frustrated, concerned, worried, I also want to know that whoever I reach out to is going to look after us, right? It's going to take care of us. It's going to tell me that everything's going to be okay, right? My car's going to make it to where it needs to get to. Like there is this sense of assurance that us as humans, as people are looking for when it comes to selection. And that's the piece I want to tap into today. Is exploring how do we make it easier for people to say yes to our services, our products, by thinking about the messaging and what we put forward. Does it hit on these big three? How do we make people think? Or how do they think about what we offer, the feelings that it evokes, how they feel about it, and the actions that we're asking for? And using this as the center for the tactics that you deploy based on the strategies you outlined in an earlier episode. So we're going to have a lot of fun. This is definitely me bringing out the academic side of me. I love talking about marketing theories and concepts, but I do intend to make it very practical today. So I'll introduce the concept. I'm going to go through an example for you as well. So a website that I think's done a really good job of nailing all three, and then what some of the implications or considerations are. And what's really cool is I've actually provided you with a audit kit. So a tool that you can use to help guide you as you reflect on your website, as well as even your sales content, and kind of think through: are we, what is the thoughts that we're evoking? What's the emotions that we're evoking? What's the actions that we're asking for? And is it ticking these boxes? So I'm going to turn on and start sharing my screen. Let me turn on the chat too. Connect chat. We're live on the chat. So if you do have any questions, feel free to drop it into the live chat. If you do drop it into the comments on any of the social media pages you might be watching this on, I'll make sure I respond to those as well. But let's share my screen and let's jump straight into it. Cool, there I am. So I just want to highlight this is where you'll get the content for today as well. So just in the Buy Local Sunshine Coast website, resources, local marketing live stream articles, go to episode 9, and that's where you'll be able to get today's slides, the audit kit that I'll talk about at the end. Of course, you can always book a marketing clarity session with me if you want to go through this content to make sure it's tailored to your business, and follow it up on video, obviously after the live stream. And of course, I have a summary article underneath as well. So that's where you can access the content. All right, so here's the slides. Let's jump straight into here. So here's the framework that I want to introduce. I'm going to link it to some well-established marketing theories that you may or may not have heard of, but help to kind of cement the role that these three things play. So it's really simple. That's why I like it. Think, what do they understand, believe, and weigh up, right? Think about it as like how they rationalize the choice, justify the choice, the logic side of how we think. Feel, what emotion are they carrying right now, right? So the vibes, right? Does this feel right? This is making me happy. Is it making me sad? Am I anxious? Am I overwhelmed? Like, what are the emotions from recognizing that, like, whatever my current state is, what my desired state is, all those sorts of things, right? So feel, and then do. What is the action we want them to take, right, or the action that they are taking, right? And there's some examples in here what that can look like from a website standpoint. So for think, rationalizing, we're looking for reasons, we're looking for evidence, features, and proof, right? Really, really important. For the feel, we're looking for story, images, a sense of empathy. You understand what I'm going through, and a sense of trust. I can trust you to deliver on your promises. And then do call, book, inquire, share, join, whatever it might be to make that first connection. And I would argue a few things around marketing, right? For my view, marketing's at its best when it's guiding decision-making. And a big role of what marketing does is around changing behavior, right? So we're looking to make changes across the three. And all three need to take place in order for us to make a decision to say yes to you as a service provider. We need to rationalize that choice. It needs to feel right. And we need to be very clear on what that action is. Right? And this links nicely to what I shared in episode 6 when I talked about the 4 mores of marketing. Highly recommend going back and revisiting that. Actually, to date, this is my highest viewed episode, the 4 mores of marketing, which is great. It also includes a plan on a page, so you can check it out. And jump on and start to kind of build out, the strategic choices. And as I defined in episode 6, strategy is about making a decision to achieve an objective based on insight. That's the strategy. Today, as we think about think, feel, or do, this is the tactics. This is how we execute against that plan. And this kind of foundation will help influence how design for our website, for our social media, how sales script, all of it, right? From end to end. How do we approach it? What are we doing across the three? All right, so let's just present, in terms of how this kind of underpins marketing for over a century, right? So this was initially, this idea of think, feel, do actually kicked off in the 60s, right? Obviously named a little bit different in terms of cognition, affective, and conative, but same thing, right? Cognition, to think, affective, feel, conative, do, right? Back from 61. So been well defined in marketing literature for quite some time. Kind of brought up back in 1898, as I mentioned, over a century, right? Initially defined as attention, interest, desire, and action. Same thing, attention and interest is the thinking, desire is the feel, action is the do. A theory from the 80s that you may not be as familiar with, elaboration likelihood model. This was very common in evaluating advertising materials. Think of it as like whether you're actually paying attention to the television ad or it's kind of playing in the background. And then, depending on in order for it to have some sort of impact, you need to at least put some level of elaboration or effort on it. So in other words, it needs to at least trigger some thoughts, some feelings, and some actions or planned actions in order for it to be considered like that you've elaborated. So the central route means that it's leaning more on the logic side, in more of a focus. This one's kind of more on the side, more feeling driven, right? And this kind of idea of emotion opens the door, reasoning is what's keeping them there. It's a really great way to frame that. Engagement, probably a term you've heard a lot about. Oh, we're going to increase engagement. Engagement is also defined, cognitive, emotional, behavioral activity during brand interactions. So most marketing literature anchors it around think, feel, and do. And with engagement, there's low levels of engagement and high levels of engagement. So it's considered as on a spectrum. So think of like a low level engagement of, I see a post, so I've read it. That's kind of the thinking. I have a reaction to it, and then I make the choice to express it by pressing like. Right, very low level, right? High level engagement, like a comment. I've read or watched the post, so I've thought about it. I have a reaction to it, an emotional reaction to it. So I've made the choice now to express that through a comment, and particularly if it's user-generated content. In other words, I'm sharing my own story, my own experience related to this thing. That's an example of high-level engagement. And research shows that high levels of engagement often relates to higher likelihood of purchase and high levels of loyalty or advocacy around the brand. So that's why we're into driving engagement, but it does need to tick these boxes. Often we think of engagement as just the one, right? But in order for it to be considered as engagement, they've had to think, feel, and do, right? Require some sort of response. Sometimes it does run backwards. It's not always think, feel, do, or feel, think, do. Sometimes the action comes first. This idea of customer participation and value co-creation, a marketing concept coming out of the early 2000s. This idea of, think about going to a Subway and kind of working with them to create your sandwich. Same with the website, right? That's co-creation of value. I can't deliver great websites unless I work with my client to pull out their stories, their wisdom, and their experience. Often we are co-creating the final product together. And sometimes with stuff like this, you'll take the action and then you'll reflect on the experience afterwards, right? You'll have an opinion from it, will emerge from it, a feeling, the vibes, the emotion will come from it as a result of the action you take. So it's quite interesting around that idea of value co-creation. I love this theory. It's a little too academic, but theory of planned behavior. But again, this idea of, in us to make a choice, attitude toward the behavior. Do I think this is a good idea? Is this accepted by the people around me, right? So does it feel good and feel good by others? And actually, do I believe that I can actually do the thing before I decide? So you can imagine, you might be making a decision on, hey, do I make a switch between ChatGPT and Claude? You'd be thinking, well, wait, is it a good idea? Well, I'm hearing it's a good idea. Other people that I know on my network has made the switch from ChatGPT to Claude, but is it complicated? What's the process? Am I going to lose the progress I've made here? I'm not sure if I'm able to make the switch, right? It's a good example of you need to tick the 3 in order for people to move forward. Another one, just more of a common one, very recent, post, 2020, the value equation from Alex Hormozi. So obviously driven through his content. I love this framing of the value equation. This idea of the value or the price you charge is related to the dream outcome. So what the life actually looks like after, what's the desired outcome they're seeking, the likelihood of that being achieved. It's rationalizing, is this a promise that the person can deliver? And that's underpinned by, how long before I get it and how much effort and sacrifice as part of the actions. And what I like about this framing is it puts stakes on feel, think, and do, right? The feeling, right, as the stake is the emotional dream outcome, the aspiration of result, the perceived likelihood, the think, rationalizing it, is it possible? Is it achievable? Is it something that can be done? And then underpinned by the actions, how long is it going to take? How much effort? And is it worth it, right? Is it worth putting this effort in? And, if it's easy, convenient, and delivers high impact or high value, then I'm more likely to say yes, I'm more likely to spend more. So I really love this phrasing. And again, underpinned by think, feel, do. Last one and go on forever, but linking back to episode 7, decision-making process, same thing. In order for us to move from need recognition right through to purchase decision, we need to be ticking these boxes the whole way through. So how we identify that there's a gap between our current state and our desired state, that becomes the need recognition. I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm bored. My business isn't performing. I want to generate more leads. I want better sunnies, whatever that kind of read recognition is through information search, right? So I got to feel comfortable with the information I'm getting. It's reliable, trustworthy, and helpful. So kind of ticking those boxes that the vibes are good to move forward. Evaluating, right? Going deeper. Is this the right time? Is this the right price? Am I getting the right compromise based on my budgets and priorities? Purchase decision for sure, ticking those boxes. And of course, after the purchase, right? How do I feel about this? Did it deliver on its promises? Was this the right choice? Will I buy it again? That becomes the action, right? So again, I feel like I can go on for the full half hour, but kind of ticking for over a century, right? This kind of all these sort of different major marketing theory concepts underpinned by this idea of think, feel, do. Makes sense. It's kind of human behavior at its core. We think about things, we feel things, right? How do we do things? And that's kind of the heart of what we look at. So with that in mind, okay, in agreement, we absolutely need to be thinking about that we need to be, as we're bringing our customers along this journey, what are their thoughts? What are their feelings? What are their actions? And is that something that we can nurture? Is it something that we can influence? How do we kind of control it in some way? So we can guide their decision-making so they're more likely to say yes. And what happens for most, particularly starting the website, I think this is a really good place to start, because I think if your website looks and feels like this, then your marketing is likely echoing how you're presenting yourself on your website. That's why I'm a big believer in start with your website, get that right before you move on to how you start to bring people into the site. And what happens is most people are creating their website, not with marketers, but with web developers who are really good on the technical, but not really good on the marketing, messaging, and strategy on how to tick these boxes. So often the websites are good on this, right? The pragmatic, the details, here's the benefits, the features, some reviews, good at kind of rationalizing the choice. The good ones will have a clear call to action. Sometimes they can get a little bit murky, but usually there's a clear call to action. But what's missing is this. And you'll find it when you go to a lot of websites, it just feels cold. It doesn't feel welcoming. It feels like it was written by someone else. Like it doesn't feel like, hey, welcome. Come into my store, right? Let me help you. Tell me about your day. What's going on? Like it doesn't have that feeling of like bringing you in. Hey, tell me about what you're going through. What's the struggles? Empathize with that problem. Like, okay, yeah, I hear you. Good news is you're not alone. Others have gone through the same process. Maybe I've had the same kind of issue as well, and I've created a solution I think is perfect for you, right? It's a really important part of that storytelling that's missing in not only most websites, but because it's not captured on the website, is they're not communicated well across the other forms of marketing. It doesn't come through in the emails, doesn't come through in the social media, doesn't even show up at networking events. A lot of people are missing this part, right? So the good news, right, back to the tow truck, is that it's, a whole category of nobody's speaking to the emotional truth. It's not a crowded market, which means it's an open goal. There's a real opportunity now, and this is a weird thing to say, to be more human, right? To express some emotion, to share some story, to speak in first person instead of hiding behind the business name or the logo, to come in and start to talk to people about how you help. And it becomes a real opportunity as people have been far more skeptical about the websites they visit, the materials that they consume. There's a lot of concern about what's real, what's fake, what's legit, what's fraud. So if you can, show up and tell a story and connect and tap into three, you're going to have an edge over your competitors, because we're in a content game now. It's not about winning with keywords and key phrases. It's about unique, helpful content, showcasing your wisdom, your experiences, and your stories. Allow people to say yes to you and your business. Something to consider before we kind of jump into an example that I wanted to share is that the level of weighting you put on feelings first, like in terms of the feelings or the effect versus think or the cognition, does depend a little bit on the type of product or service that you offer. So like, for instance, you don't want to get too into the weeds around the emotional stories on like security or insurance, because these are high involvement purchases where they do need a lot of information. So it might be more like a 70-30 kind of balance, where you are prioritizing the rationalization, the details, but then complementing it with the stories and the emotion, versus products like jewelry, cosmetics, bridal, fragrance, where it's far more emotional, right? It's the flip side, like 70% emotional, 30% rationally, maybe even less than that, right? You may not necessarily be looking at, active ingredients in the fragrance or too much like into the weeds. You're really looking like, how does this make me feel? And what is the reaction I get from the people around me? So the balance is obviously flipped. And same with low involvement products, like in fuel, like when you're going in to fill up, you're not wanting to hear the full story about, the oil man and the journey of how the fuel got from under the ground to you just want the fuel at a good price that's convenient, right? So we just want to purchase it. And the opposite here for like something like ice cream, right? You don't want all the facts and figures and all the ingredients that go into it, because it's like, that's just too much. An ice cream's a treat. And it should just tap into that, right? So again, like there's a little bit of, use this a bit of a guide to help determine the proportion between how much effort you put around the rationalization of the choice versus kind of the emotion around that choice. And I hope that's a nice simple guide for that. Cool. My general rule of thumb, and I do use this for websites, and like, what's the flow? Now, the truth is any combination works, right? Feel, think, do, think, feel. Think, feel, like whatever combination kind of works in your storytelling. Generally speaking, though, for most kind of service providers, I do kind of lead with the end in creating advertising material. I'll lead with the emotion, right? So this idea of name the emotional truth of the moment they're in. So kind of empathizing, understanding the problem, speaking to their needs, their pain point. I'm sure you've heard a lot of this before, but making the connection with them. Then helping them to rationalize the choice to work with you. So, building out the evidence, the proof, that the case studies on why you're the right person to alleviate the bad feelings and help them with the good feelings. And then the actions, right? In terms of once they kind of go, yep, you understand me, and I can see how working with you will make me feel better. It looks like you've got the evidence and proof that you can deliver, and the pricing feels right. And then what's the clear, simple next step that feels low risk? Right. So this is like a nice way to think that. And this is how I generally kind of work on websites of, we'll lead with the emotion at the top, start to build in the rationalization in the middle of the website, and then very kind of clear action steps towards the bottom of the website. And I'm sure you've seen examples of that in a variety of websites that you've visited. Cool. So Actually, I will touch on this because I really do want to share an example of where this is done well. But I just want to highlight, because I did say that one of the biggest challenges businesses have is around the feel side. And then how do you do that without a brand budget? I said it's really sharing your story, your wisdom, your experiences, sharing photos. If you can't get professionally photos done, just get your phone out, get some selfies, get some short videos, but make sure that whatever you're presenting to your customer, they're getting a sense of the people behind it, and the story behind it. And someone who does host a number of websites, the second most visited page on any website is always the About page, right? Homepage is where they go, they make the assessment, and then they'll jump to the About page to kind of get confirmation that they're in the right place. So very important to get those two right. And the About page often gets more visits than the Contact page, which tells you something, right? One, because often you put the contact details on both the About and Homepage, but it does show that people don't just jump straight to Contact. Often it's the About becomes that kind of middleman on whether they decide to take action on. So very important. So combine these things, right? Think about the stories that you can tell. And if you can't name people or name organizations, do it in a way that brings out previous experiences and stories without individually naming people, but provides a nice storytelling structure. Same with videos. Love video sales letters and these types of things where you just front of the camera, being honest, open, and just kind of sharing how you help people. Photos, imagery, same thing, and language that mirrors. So it should feel like it's coming from you. It really should have your voice. And you might recall in episode 8, so what we did last week, one of the bigger tips I gave was, instead of you prompting AI, get AI to prompt you. Right? Get the AI to interview you. Whether you're creating articles, social media, that's the switch, right? AI is really good now at challenging you, asking follow-ups, thinking about the responses you're giving and kind of working through to achieve an objective of the type of content you're looking to create, and then using that transcript. And as I mentioned in last episode, I like to talk, right? So versus typing in my responses, which will be filtered and kind of self-edited, just give it a crack, right? Just talk to it, and then allow it to kind of take that and then succinctly kind of share these elements. So very, very important. If you are using AI, get AI to prompt you instead of you prompting AI. All right, get it to be the interviewer. All right, the example, right? Because I really do want to share this as a really good example of that. So I'm going to use mates, rates, mowing, and property maintenance as an example, because I think they do this really, really well. An organization like a local company that mows lawns and provides property maintenance. So starting with the field, right? I'm going to show the site shortly. So you're tired of unreliable trades that never show up on time, frustrated with subpar communication and inconsistent service. And if you're nodding along, you're in the right place. We get it, and we built our business to be a solution you've been searching for, right? So speaking to a common pain point that people have about organizing someone to come in and do a gardening cleanup, mowing. So let me show you the website, right? So you can see that here, right? So you've got it here. And the other key part to this is the imagery. It's a group of guys with the thumbs up, right? So it has good vibes, good energy. But you're also seeing behind them a ton of equipment, right? So their promise of, big or small jobs is reinforced because they've got a large team here with plenty of equipment, and you can tell they're having good energy and having a good time, right? So the image is telling a hell of a story, right? And this is kind of as we go, right? That's the messaging there. All right, so we're empathizing with them, reinforcing it with another image, right? Of guys having fun, plenty of equipment, helps to reinforce it. Then the thinking, right? Now we're starting to bring in the rationalization, the features. Big enough to cope, small enough to care. Beautiful line as a segue into fast response times, reliable service, efficient for big jobs, personalized care. So it helps reinforce the feeling, right? Good vibes and that. Right, now we're starting to provide proof through testimonials. Right, we've even got where they've shown up with editorials in local newspapers and magazines. Right, a little bit about their services. Right, now we're starting to speak to the customers. So again, guiding decision making. So homeowners, here's the info for you. Property resort managers, here's the info for you. Aged care and NDIS, here's the info for you. With dedicated landing pages for them. Clients, right, reinforcing trust cues. Simple next steps, right? Now we're starting to get into what the actions are, right? Request a callback. If there's an emergency, here's the number. Right, great. All right, with some freaking last questions. So just a really nice kind of thinking about those cues, right? And that follows through with their dedicated pages for their client pages. So you can see it's not an overly complicated thing, right, to tell the story. But the key here is, images are really important, and these are just photos they're clearly taken on their phone, right? Like not professional photos, anything crazy. Like they're just like, this is just someone's gone out with the camera, taken a phone, perfect, right? Emotional cues, right? A little bit of local advertising, and using it to reinforce here, and just telling a really simple story, right? So if you are looking to get it done, it just feels obvious on why that's the right choice. It's a really good call. Cool. So the slides kind of just help reinforce that kind of flow. So I just want to combine the two so you can check it out. But yeah, very, very a great way to do that through your website. And again, highlighting one image, two jobs, it hits both. The feeling good blokes, good energy, they'll look after you, and that much gear can handle acreage, not just courtyards. So it ticks the box through the image. Great. All right. So last thing I want to cover before I introduce the audit kit that I provided for you is this, right? People buy, I'll start here. When think and feel fight each other, right? So I think this is really important when there's a conflict between the rational decision, right, and the emotional decision. I have a feeling all of us have experienced this, where we think it's a good idea, but emotionally we're like, no, like the vibes aren't quite right, I want to do it, or I want to do it, but there's a fear of regret, of I'm going to buy that ice cream, right, and then regret my choice afterwards, right? So that's kind of what I want to highlight here, right? When Phil says no, but Think says yes. I'm anxious about this. I'm not sure, but the numbers stack up, so I'll go ahead. But they're walking with a ton of doubt. They got instinct where there's a conflict to that. Same with Think says no, but Phil says yes. I'm on a diet. I cannot justify it. It's not the right time, but I end up buying it anyway. And the reason why I think this is really important to highlight is that when the two are in conflict, at the moment they buy, they're going to regret it. So if your objective is around repeat customers, recurring customers, I want people to keep coming back. If they're in a conflict, right? And this is why I'm not a big fan of pressure tactics for sales. I think the job of salesmen is to guide decision-making. Same with marketing. It should be easy to say yes, easy to say no. But if you're kind of exerting enormous pressure or creating environments where they're doubting themselves, and you don't deliver, so obviously then the stakes are raised, and as they reflect after post decision, then they're unlikely to come back to you, and you're likely to get some sort of negative review. You're likely to show others, no, don't do that. I had my doubts initially, but I thought I'd give it a crack, and I just regret it ever since, right? So very important to really think about making sure that it's in synergy, right? That 1 + 1 + 1 = 3, not with the conflict. And we can, by accident, create this conflict in our messaging, right? And I've made this mistake in the past where I've put in too much details that's created an overwhelm, right? Not enough storytelling, which hasn't created an emotional connection. When I first started out, coming from corporate, I was absolutely behind my brand, right, behind my logo, and was very hesitant to put my face in it. And you learn these lessons as an entrepreneur of no, how important it is to show up, right, and actually be the representative of the organization, speaking to the vision, the culture, all types of stuff. So just be really mindful of that, because you can accidentally do this. I actually see it when people are doing their 60-second pitch in a networking event, where where this kind of feels like it's in conflict. Like, I get what they're saying, but the vibes are off, like the energy feels off, and there's something there where it's creating a bit of doubt, a bit of uncertainty. Cool. So as I said here, it becomes a retention problem. You can win the sale, lose the customer in the same transaction, and that's a key takeaway to that. And that's not what we want. It's not how we build sustainable organizations. If we have high churn rates, there's a real issue in here that these things are not in alignment. All right, so that's what we want, alignment. Make it easy to say yes and easy to feel good about having said it, all right? And that means that it's not just in your marketing, it's not just in your sales process. You've got to be really thoughtful on what it looks like after they've used your service or used your product, that you're also ticking that box, right? Help them understand the impact that you've had. Help them understand the emotions with it as well. Allow them to reflect with you. Hey, what worked? What didn't work? What do you do differently next time? So that way the actions become clear, so they know what the forward path looks like. So having that reflection, that discussion, I've said it in previous episodes, be thankful, share gratitude, express your that through gifts or through compliments or through just say the words, right? Some examples here. Congratulations. I know there is always a bit of uncertainty, so here's what to expect. Great choice, great decision, and here's exactly what happens next. Using these kind of words and languages to kind of tap into the both, depending on which one you're going to lean on the most. But very important to, again, deliver across all three. All right, so as I said, I did want to create an audit kit, something that you can use to evaluate your website to make sure that you're doing this, and not just the website, but also as you're starting to think about the customer journey that you have, and reflecting on, are we in alignment on each of those stages across the board. So so what I've included in the worksheet, it's just 3 pages, super simple, didn't want to overwhelm. So empathy mapping, I love empathy mapping. It's a very powerful tool. So I've set up a template for you to use there. The audit grid for your journey, great. And then also a website scorecarding as well to see if you're doing it on your homepage. So let me just show you what that looks like. It's just this, as I said, 3 pages. So introduces the activity, right? And you've got here 4 pages. Here's the empathy map. Hopefully you've seen this before. I might even do a dedicated episode just on empathy mapping, but it's a very powerful exercise. Getting into the minds of your customers. What do they think and feel? What do they see? What do they hear? What do they say and do? What are their pain points? And what are their gains as a result of this? So very, very powerful. Then mapping out your whole journey. So thinking about from first contact to consideration, ready to act after sale. So kind of compress the journey just a little bit here, just to make it a little simpler. And then kind of thinking about, what are we doing now based on our content, on our messaging, on our follow-ups or lack thereof? What might they be thinking? What might they be feeling? And what might they be doing, right? So really trying to think about breaking that up into the stages. And then thinking about your homepage, like a simple tick, like, hey, what's the first thing they see, the headline, and just some nice follow-up questions here. And it's just a self-reflection. Are we doing it? Is it all 3? Great. If we're missing one, then kind of make a statement on what the fix is, right? Because again, we want to make it easy for people to say yes and easy to feel good about having said it. Now, as always, if you need help with pulling this together, happy to review it with you. That's what the marketing clarity sessions are for, where we can jump on one-to-one and work on it together to make sure that you're ticking the boxes on here. So absolutely welcome to book that. That's here, your marketing clarity session. I've got the link in the PDF as well. It'll be here as well, book marketing clarity session. High value, plenty that we'll get from it. It's a recorded session, so you get the transcripts. And there's also a bunch of reports that I generate on your behalf, including the website intelligence report, the expert panel review, which focuses on your offering. There's a ton of really cool stuff that's incorporated as part of the marketing clarity session, so you know what to do next as a result of being on the call with us. So plenty of availability on a couple of days there, so feel free to book. Even for those who can't quite make it during the week, feel free to book on the Saturday mornings as well. All right, let's, I think that's all I had on the slides. Yeah, you got your action plan, so make sure you're evaluating, act fast, right? It's one of those things that's easy to forget. So if you're watching this video, put this as one of the things you might do this afternoon and do an audit on your site. So I'm gonna hit stop sharing, come back to here. Cool. Thanks, babe. Glad you found it helpful. Sorry, I'm just getting to your comment now. Oh, 2:30, 5 minutes ago. Nice. So I hope you found that helpful. Thank you so much for joining us for today's local marketing live stream. And you can see me on Monday at local networking nights, Monday, not Wednesday. Next week, some Monday night networking of having some fun with the advertising. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but I'm having a lot of fun with promoting a networking event like it's Monday Night Football. so keep an eye out for it. It's a lot of fun. I did want to give a shout out to, here we go, new books that I got from locals, Dave Clare, Lead Differently, and Gavin Keeley, Culture is Hard. So thank you for sharing those books with us last week. Looking forward to reading it. Haven't got to it yet. But if you are interested in those from two local authors, let me know. Happy to share the details and hopefully kind of share what I learned as well from that, which is great. So yeah, thank you. Hopefully see you on Monday, and of course see you same time next week on Tuesday. Oh, here we go.